My name is Jeremy Lim, and I'm a medical doctor, and I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of the company Emily, which is a compression of three words: Asia Microbiome Library. And as the three words suggest, what we do is that we are building up the world's largest microbiome database of multi-ethnic Asia, including Australians, right, so that we can use all this data to create products and services that are bespoke or tailored to the people living in this part of the world.
More than 2,000 years ago, Hippocrates supposedly declared that all disease begins in the gut. Gut microbiomes refer to microorganisms, bacteria, viruses, fungi, and other life forms that live within the human digestive system. Research has shown that our gut microbiome affects our overall health. In fact, several diseases such as diabetes and dementia are now believed to be influenced by processes in the gut microbiome. Dr. Jeremy Lim, co-founder of the Asian Microbiome Library, is working to build a reference library for the gut microbiome in Asia. This is important for a whole host of reasons.
So we're here at Vimut Hospital, and you've obviously made a decision to partner with Vimut on this project. Can you tell me why?
Yes. Well, for us as a pioneering microbiome company in this part of the world, coming out of academia, we were really looking for like-minded partners that would be, from a service point of view, operationally very savvy, commercially very sound, but beyond that, they weren't just interested in selling more kits, doing more microbiome transplants. We also appreciated that there was a responsibility to advance the state of the science in this part of the world. Over 99% of the research in the microbiome is actually performed today outside Southeast Asia, right? There's incredibly good work done in North America, in Europe, in East Asia, but in Southeast Asia, we're unfortunately really falling behind. And so we were looking for partners that were commercially, service-wise very sound, but also were passionate and were keen to journey with us on this discovery, on putting the data together to improve health for everybody. And that's really why, after a long courtship period, getting to know each other better, we felt very comfortable with Vimut's philosophy, its values, and so here we are.
Great. Well, it's good to see you here today. It's a very interesting topic, actually, and when you say a lot of the research has been in Europe and the States and so on, when you see the changing diet of Asia, particularly a lot of young people more exposed to fast foods, it must be a whole lot of new gut issues coming about.
A whole host of industrialized diseases that we've never seen before. I'll give you one specific example that's unfortunately getting more and more common here in Asia, and that's inflammatory bowel disease. When I was a medical student 30 years ago, we were told Asians don't get inflammatory bowel disease. In fact, what my pathology professor told me was that if you think a patient has inflammatory bowel disease, you're wrong. The patient has tuberculosis of the gut. That's how rare, how unheard of inflammatory bowel disease was just one generation ago. Today, there are at least 250,000 patients with inflammatory bowel disease living in Southeast Asia alone. And I think diet, lifestyles have a major role to play in this. And I can understand the hype around the microbiome because it affects everything. Scientists have used the microbiome to treat autism, to treat various neurological diseases, to treat diabetes, obesity, and really so on, right? And you're absolutely right, Rain, that oftentimes the hype runs ahead of the scientific reality. And that's why at Emily, in our partnership with Vimut, we want to be very, very cautious and advance in accordance with what the science permits us to do, right? And part of this is education, because microbiome science is complex. Even amongst us medical doctors, unless you're specifically in the field, most doctors would have either zero or a very, very superficial understanding of the microbiome.
So just a very basic question when we talk about gut health and what we eat. Is there, very simple, in simple terms, things that you should not eat if you want to have good gut health?
Well, let me start with the positives, what we should eat. And what I tell my patients is, if you remember nothing else, remember the 3 Fs: fiber, fermented, and fresh. Right? So 90% of the developed world don't consume enough fiber in our day-to-day diets. And it's very understandable because a lot of modern food has had the good stuff, the fiber, the phytochemicals and all taken out of it, right? So as has been described, a rainbow diet. So the more colors, the more textures, the better it is for our microbes. Fermented foods, it's very interesting that every culture has its version of fermented foods, whether it's sauerkraut, kimchi, acar in Singapore and in Malaysia. So everyone's culture kind of intuitively understands that fermented foods not only bring out the flavors but are good for gut health. And lastly, fresh. Right? We in tropical Asia are very, very fortunate. We have ready access to freshly produced foods. We have the whole variety, different colors. You go to any wet market in Singapore, in Thailand, or around the region, and wow, the colors dazzle you. So we have it easier than many countries where the food sources may be much more limited. On the negative side, avoid ultra-processed foods. In fact, about a decade ago, one of the pioneering microbiome scientists permitted his teenage son to eat nothing but fast food, a particular hamburger brand, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And over just 10 days, the boy's microbiome diversity plummeted by 40%. And so,
terrifying.
and so we have to be really very, very careful, not just to put in the good stuff, but avoid, like the plague, the bad stuff.
So we essentially are what we eat, aren't we?
Absolutely, we are what we eat, and that's actually a beacon of hope, because by changing what we eat, we can improve our health. And in fact, as you said, you cannot outrun a bad diet. So food is medicine.
Yes, absolutely. Easier thing to do, change what you eat. It's not that difficult.
Especially
Maybe
in this part of the world.
It's difficult up here,
Yeah.
I think, isn't it? This is where psychologically it's just getting people to change their habits.
Yes. And unfortunately, the healthy food sector doesn't have the same budgets, the same marketing reach that the ultra-processed food industry has. So as part of this partnership with really Vimut, we also hope to spread the word of how to improve gut health. And remember, good health starts with gut health.
So there you go. Fiber, fermented, and fresh. Look it up. It's good for you.
Thank you so much, Rain.
It was great.
You're wonderful.
Thank you.